Hi everybody, welcome to the online class of Ideal English Higher Secondary School. This is your English classroom, and in last class we had discussed the second unit. We had an introductory activity, we had played some puzzle games, and we discussed the first stanza of the poem, Death the Leveler. And in the first stanza itself, the poet had cleared his point of view that there is no discrimination in front of death. Everybody will face death. The high, the low, the mighty and the meek, everybody will be equal in front of death. That's why the poet selected the title, Death the Leveler. Death makes everyone level, equalizes everyone. Right. And we had said there is no armor against fate. Nobody can prevent fate. There is no means by which you can stop your destiny. Right. And we had discussed that the kings will be made equal to the farmers in dust. So in that way, death is the ultimate equalizer. Okay, dear ones, here we are going to continue to the next stanza, the second stanza of the poem. Listen to the text. Some men with swords may reap the field and plant fresh laurels where they kill, but their strong nerves at last must yield. They tame but one another still. Early or late, they stoop to fate and must give up their murmuring breath when they pale captives creep to death. Okay, so the poet says, some men with swords reap the field. Some men with swords may reap the field and plant fresh laurels where they kill. The poet says, some mighty warriors reap the battlefield, reap the hurts of the enemy in battlefield, and they heap the hurts of enemies and plant fresh laurels where they kill. They kill the enemies and they plant fresh laurels. Laurels means a kind of a shining green leaves used to adorn the heads of brave people as a sign of honoring them. So in ancient Greek, they had the practice of honoring people by wearing a garland made of laurels. And they plant fresh laurels. So by killing their enemies in plenty, they make history, they mark their name in the history, they plant fresh laurels where they kill, but their strong nerves at last must yield. Even though they kill their enemies, even though they heap the hurts of their enemies, they also will have to kneel in front of death. They also will succumb, they also will surrender in front of death. At last, they also, the mighty one, the victorious warrior, also will have to kneel in front of death. They tame one another still, early or late, they stoop to fate. Men are mortals, they die, everybody dies. Even then, they try to tame others, they try to control others with their power. They know that they will die one day. They are not going to live forever. Still, they are trying to control the others using their power. Early or late, they stoop to fate. As it is said earlier, sooner or later, they will have to surrender to death. Death will overpower anyone and must give up their murmuring breath when they pale captives creep to death. Those people who are victorious in war, they also will have to stoop to death. Their murmuring breath will leave them, their last breath. Their murmuring breath, their breath that is not as easy and as powerful as they used to breathe before. In their deathbed, it is just a murmuring. And their murmuring breath will leave them finally. And the pale captives will creep to death. The captives, those who were captured as prisoners in wars, those who were caught in wars, they are kept in jail. They are put behind the bars. And the pale captives, those who are in jail, they are pale in color because of their tiredness, lack of food. And those pale captives, the defeated ones who are in jail, also will creep to death. The poet says, the victorious one, the one who defeated the enemy, and the one who were captured, the defeated one who were captured and imprisoned, both will die. And death is the ultimate power. There is nothing which can withstand death. In this stanza also, the poet uses so many figures of speech. He equates, he compares the battlefield to a farmland and the warrior to a farmer who harvests his farmland. So in that way, the poet says a warrior harvests, cut away the herds of enemies, and plant fresh laurels means, so it is equated. He make history, making history, marking one's name in history is compared to planting some kind of laurels. So the poet uses figures of speech. Okay, coming to the third stanza, listen to the text. The garland wither on your brow, then boast no more your mighty deeds. Upon death's purple altar now, see where the victim bleeds. Your hearts must come to the cold tomb. Only the actions of the just smell sweet and blossom in their dust. So the garlands wither on your brow, then boast no more your mighty deeds. The garlands that you have received, the garlands that was adorning your head, showing that you were once a mighty warrior. You were a courageous warrior, and that garland on your head, on your brow, wither. It fades its glory. It loses its name and fame. In the course of time, you lose the fame and name that you have gained throughout your life. The garlands on your brow wither. It gets dried up and fall down. The garlands wither on your brow. Then boast no more your mighty deeds. So, don't boast on your mighty deeds, your courageous actions. You can't say, I have conquered this land and this, I have achieved this and this. Don't boast on your mighty deeds, because no achievement will last forever. All these achievements, all the name, all the fame that you have achieved in your lifetime will be fading, its glory will be losing its beauty in the course of time, will be losing its respect in the course of time. So don't boast on your mighty deeds. Upon death's purple altar, See where the victim bleeds. An altar is an elevated place, a surface where offerings are submitted to the God. So here, the death is equated to that of a God, and in front of the death, everybody offers themselves. On the altar of death, everybody bleeds. We bleed to death on the altar of the death. So why does the poet uses the color purple? Because the color purple was used at the time of funeral by most of the religions. So the poet says the altar of the death is purple, where everybody bleeds to death. Everybody surrender themselves, everybody offer themselves to death, where the victim bleeds. Victim. See the expression victim. The poet uses oxymoron. What is an oxymoron? Oxymorons are two different words having opposite meaning brought together. Victor means victorious one, the successful one. Victim, the defeated one. So the poet brought both these words together and said victim, where the victim bleeds. So in this case, victim is an example for oxymoron. So the poet says all the victorious people are just victims in front of death. Even if you are a great warrior, you had a lot of achievements in your life, you are the most powerful one when you were living, but when you come in front of death, you are just victim to death. Just pray to death. Your heads must come to the cold tomb. Your heads must come to the cold tomb. Everybody should come to the cold tomb, to the grave. Everybody will be taken to the grave. Whatever luxurious were your life, whatever expensive things you were using in this worldly life, everybody will be taken to the cold grave, to the tomb. Everybody will have to come to the tomb. And in the last two lines, the poet says the very beautiful message that only the actions of just smell sweet and blossom in their dust. Only the actions of just, only the good deeds, actions of the just means works of good people. The noble actions will smell sweet and blossom in their dust. It is the only thing that survives death. We said nobody survives death. Nobody can live forever. Death snatches everybody and everything, all our wealth, name, fame, everything is snatched by the death. But there is one thing which can survive death. There is one thing which can last forever. Even after your death, it is the good thing that you have done when you were alive. When you were alive. At your lifetime, all the good deeds, the noble activities that you had done, at your lifetime will smell sweet. It will remain in the hearts of people. That gives you immortality. Even though you are not present physically, your remembrance will be living in the hearts of people through the noble action that you had done. And it smells sweet. It spreads its fragrance all over. The nobility of your action will be spreading everywhere, and the people will be gaining its smell, fragrance. So through these last two lines, the poet gives that beautiful message that if there is something which can survive death, it is the noble action, it is the good deeds that you have done at your lifetime. A very beautiful poem with 3 small stanzas and gives us a very powerful message too. Okay, dear ones, listen to the recitation of the poem and go through it once again. If you find it difficult to understand in some particular places, play the video once again and clear your doubts.
The glories of our blood and state are shadows, not substantial things. There is no armor against fate. Death lays his icy hand on kings. Scepter and crown must tumble down, and in the dust be equal made with the poor crooked scythe and spade. Some men with swords may reap the field, and plant fresh laurels where they kill. But their strong nerves at last must yield. They tame but one another still. Early or late they stoop to fate, and must give up the murmuring breath when they pale captives creep to death. The garlands wither on your brow, then boast no more your mighty deeds. Upon death's purple altar now, see where the victim bleeds. Your heads must come to the cold tomb. Only the actions of the just smell sweet and blossom in their dust.
Okay, now we can go to some other parts of this poem. Okay, in last class we had discussed some figures of speech. In your textbook there is a box behind this poem where such figures of speech have been discussed. The first one, personification. We discussed in last class. Listen to the definition. A figure of speech in which human qualities are attributed to inanimate objects. Human qualities have been given to an inanimate object. Example, O wild west wind. In this line, the poet tries to address west wind. He calls the west wind by its name, O wild west wind. So here, we know that wind is not in a position to listen to you. It can't hear you, and it can't even give you a response. Still the poet calls the wind by its name, tries to address. So here the poet tries to attribute human qualities of listening to the west wind. The same way we have learned in this poem, death lays his icy hand on kings. And we all know death is not a living thing, death is not a human being, death doesn't have a hand. Till the poet attributes the qualities of human beings to death by saying death has a hand and it touches kings too. So that's personification. We had discussed last class and we had a few more examples there. Okay, the other one is metaphor, a word or expression used to describe somebody or something in a way that is different from its normal use. One is identified with the other. So one thing is said to be the other thing. This is this. For example, if you say someone, you are a cheetah on track. You are a cheetah on track means yes, you are fast runner, you are a sprinter, you run so fast. Right. So here we are saying you are cheetah. Right. We explain one person with something which is not normally used to explain one. We do not use the word cheetah to explain, to describe someone, but in this case, when we say his speed at running, we use the word cheetah to explain. So it is an example for metaphor. And there is a slight difference between metaphor and simile. If it is a simile, we use the word like or as in comparison. So simile is a figure of speech where two things are compared using like or as. If I say you are like cheetah, it is an example for simile. You run as fast as a cheetah. It is an example for simile, because we find the expressions like or as in these examples. At the same time, if you say you are cheetah, it is an example for metaphor. Find the difference. In metaphor, we don't have the usage like or as. At the same time, in simile we have like or as. Okay, some more examples are there for metaphor here. Oh, my love is a red, red rose. My love is a red, red rose. So the poet says his love is red rose. So it's an example for metaphor. At the same time, when he says my love is like a red rose, it is an example for simile. That's the difference. Okay. Now, metonymy. Metonymy. When one thing is mentioned instead of another thing with which it has become closely associated. In this poem we have seen the poet uses scythe and spade, sceptre and crown. Instead of saying kings, the poet says sceptre and crown must tumble down. Sceptre and crown, we have already known what is sceptre and what is crown. These two things are closely associated with kings. So instead of saying kings, the poet says sceptre and crown. So here the poet uses metonymy. The same way he says scythe and spade. Scythe and spade instead of saying farmers. So by saying scythe and spade, the poet means the farmers themselves. So these expressions are said to be metonymy. We usually use the expression pen is mightier than sword. So here pen stands for something written, a book. A good book is mightier. It is capable of changing people than sword, than war, than warriors. So a written book is mightier, is more capable of changing people than a war or a warrior. So something closely associated is mentioned, and some other things, the persons are meant. That is metonymy. Okay, and another one, a figure of speech that we hadn't discussed before, is oxymoron. Oxymoron, what does it mean? Oxymoron, what is oxymoron? Oxymoron, when two terms which in ordinary usage are contraries are used together. Two words having two opposite meaning brought together, it is said to be oxymoron. In this poem, we have learned the expression victor, victim, and we have said the meaning of the word victor is the victorious one, the successful one, and victim, the defeated one. Right, the defeated one. So the victorious one and the defeated one brought together by saying victor, victim. So it's an example for oxymoron. And there are some other examples here. Pleasing pains. Pleasing, something makes you happy. That is pleasing. Pleasing pain. Pain means agony, pain, ache. So something is painful is not pleasing. Something is pleasing is not painful in ordinary thing, right? In normal case, something pleasing is not painful. Something painful is not pleasing. But in this case, it is brought together and said pleasing pain. So two opposite things brought together. So it's an example for oxymoron. And listen to the other examples. Loving hate. Loving hate. Burn and freeze. Burn and freeze. So two opposite expressions brought together. In another poem, you can see a terrible beauty is born. Terrible beauty, something terrible and horrible is not a beautiful thing. Something beautiful is not a terrible thing. So when both these are brought together, it's said to be oxymoron. Okay, so you have learned all these figures of speech, and you have to make your own examples for these figures of speech as your assignment activities. I'll be giving you some other activities too. So appreciation of a poem. It is asked for examination. So for writing an appreciation, you have to follow some steps. Behind this chapter, the level of the poem, it is asked, attempt an appreciation of the poem. So when you attempt appreciation of any poem, you have to follow some steps. And the first step is, it should have a good introduction and a good content part and a conclusion. Right. So what are the things you have to include in introductory part and the content part, and in the closing part, the conclusion part will be discussed here. So in an introduction, you have to mention the name of the poet and the title of the poem. What is the title of the poem and the name of the poet? Talk a few things about the poet and talk about the theme of the poem in the first paragraph. That makes the introduction of the appreciation. So name of the poem, name of the poet, a few things about the poet, and the theme of the poem should be there in the first paragraph as an introduction. Okay, then comes the content part. In the content part, we discussed what are being discussed in the poem. So you can write stanza wise. In the first stanza, the poet says this and this. In the second stanza and in the third stanza. Right. So a short gist of the poem. Paraphrasing. It is said paraphrasing means give a small summary about the content of the poem as the content part. After this content part, you have to comment on the poetic devices. What are the poetic devices used by the poet? All the figures of speech you can mention, alliteration, assonance, rhyming words, rhyming schemes, and images. All these things can be mentioned here in the section of poetic devices. Okay, so after the introduction and the content part, comment on the figures of speech, comment on the poetic devices, including the figures of speech, alliteration, assonance, rhyming words, rhyming scheme, and the language used by the poet, and the structure of the poem, the mood of the poem, all those things can be discussed here in a paragraph. And as a conclusion, you can talk about your opinion about this poem, the relevance of the poem, the message that is being conveyed through the poem, and how relevant the poem in the present situation. All those things can be mentioned in the conclusion. So this makes a good appreciation. So these steps can be used for any poem to prepare an appreciation. So follow this and prepare a good appreciation of your own. Okay, dear ones, for today we are stopping here, and we will meet with another lesson in next class. Till then, goodbye, have a nice day.